Arts, you look beautiful this morning. You changed, we were talking, you changed the energy when you walked into the room. So that's amazing. That's a great way to kick off this event today. I'm very happy to be here. I really want to thank Dr. Dias for reaching out and inviting me to this amazing event. My name is Dr. Macklin King. I'm the CEO of Chicago Public Schools. And on behalf of the district, I'm just amazed and thankful that Shy Arts was chosen. As it was just stated, that this event has roots, but it is the first time within 15 years that it's back in the U.S. And guess what, Shy Arts? You were chosen, Shy Arts of Chicago, to bring this event back to the United States. So give yourselves a round of applause. You should feel real special. What doesn't escape me, I did my research, Dr. Vance, on the event because this was my first time learning of the global celebration. So you all are now on a global platform. And what stood out to me is that the event's core values, does this sound familiar, Shy Arts? Peace, mutual understanding, and cultural dialogue that powerfully echoes through this school. Does that sound familiar? So you all were just ripe and ready for this event today. So I just want to take the time to just, in the spirit of jazz and the informance, which was new, is something I'm going to take away with me as well, a unique blend of live performance with educational insight. So we all know that jazz, and our board president's in the office, and he told us he's a huge jazz fan. He should have been up here introducing with me because jazz is a way to connect the world regardless of ethnicity, socioeconomic status. It is a way of connecting with people without words. And so I'm honored that the Herbie Hancock Institute has chosen Chicago and Shy Arts. And I'm honored to introduce the performers joining us today, 6 of the best college jazz musicians in the world, each pursuing a master's degree at UCLA. And I'm honored to have the acclaimed vocalist and Institute alumni, Darynn Dean, with us today. So, and I just want to emphasize this, Shy Arts, that Shy Arts, the event that you're experiencing today, being presented personally by the Herbie Hancock Institute at Shy Arts, it's the only one worldwide happening this year, bringing this community global visibility. I want to thank the Institute again for choosing Shy Arts, and I know we're going to enjoy some amazing, beautiful music. And I now would turn this over to Dr. J.B. Vance.
Well, it's great to be back in Chicago. You know, I recognize many faces because I come here every year to do a 3-day residency where I work with tomorrow's jazz stars. I saw Denham over there. How are you, Denham? Nice to see you. The next great vibes player on the scene. Thank you so much for having us. We're going to be talking a lot about jazz today, but I want to tell you the 2 most important things you need to know before we start. First of all, I want you to know that jazz is America's music, meaning jazz was born in this country. Now, truth be told, it's now the world's music, but it started in this country. It started in New Orleans, Louisiana, and then it made its way up to Chicago, and then spread throughout the rest of the United States and, of course, the world. But jazz was born here. It grew out of the African-American experience in the United States of America. It's our music. Second thing I want to tell you is the most important element of jazz is improvisation. Now, what improvisation means is that they are composing most of everything you hear today, most everything, on the spur of the moment. It's not planned or written ahead of time like classical music or a lot of pop music. It's improvised. So I want you to think of jazz like a conversation. It's just like any other language, like English or Spanish or French or Mandarin or Japanese. What does a language do? It communicates thoughts and feelings. What does jazz do? It communicates thoughts and feelings. So it's musical conversation. Let's say you're having a conversation with you. You don't know what you're going to say till you say something. And then you don't know what you're going to say till you answer back. And maybe you'll come into the conversation and the whole topic will change. And maybe you'll come into the conversation and the whole thing will get heated up. And you'll have to come into the conversation to cool the whole thing out. And you don't know what you're going to say until you're in the moment. Jazz musicians do the same thing. But rather than using words to communicate how they're feeling at the moment, they're using music. So, who we have today performing for you is the Herbie Hancock Institute of Jazz Performance Ensemble. These are, yes. There's several components to the Herbie Hancock Institute. One is our college program at UCLA, and all these students were hand-selected by the great Herbie Hancock and Ambrose Acamuseri and Herb Albert and a panel of just the clinicians and judges to select this group to get a complete scholarship, room and board, stipend, all their tuition at UCLA. They're the best in the world. So I'd like to introduce them to you now. First, I'd like to introduce the rhythm section. And the rhythm section, I mean piano, bass, and drums, because they're the ones who are responsible for keeping the rhythm happening, to make it groove, to make it feel good, to make it bounce. Here they are. Elsie Ingbo on piano, Yeren Kim on bass, and Milo Rakotananahari on drums. From Connecticut, South Korea, and France, respectively. Give it up for the rhythm section. Keep your applause going from Wanzi Harriet on guitar from Atlanta, Georgia. And our two horn players, Nicholas Jalen on trumpet from Miami, and Nathan Gelbreth on trombone from Seattle. We're going to be talking a lot about how jazz works and how jazz has evolved and the different styles of jazz. But right now, we want to just start with a jazz tune. Just start with a jazz tune, and we're going to start with a tune, one of Herbie Hancock. And by the way, Herbie Hancock, our chairman, he's also the International Goodwill Ambassador for UNESCO, was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. Blue Note Records, one of the most prestigious jazz record labels. This was Herbie's first recording on Blue Note, and it was an album called Taken Off, and here is his tune, Driftin'. Yeah, that was Driftin' by the great Herbie Hancock. So right now I want to show you how jazz works. How does jazz work? How do they do what they do? With, look at this right here. This is just one sheet of music, and this is a tune called Tenor Madness by a famous tenor saxophone player by the name of Sonny Rollins. And all the musicians need is one piece of music for the whole band. Just one piece of music for the whole band. So this is the trumpet part, the trombone part, and the guitar, and the piano, bass, drums, and vocal, because they know what to do with it. They've studied jazz, just like you've studied English, or you've studied Spanish, or you've studied French. You learn the language, and then you're able to improvise. Now, what you see here is one song, and this has got 12 measures in it. If you look here, these are bar lines that divide the music into measures. So there's 12 measures, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And there's 4 beats in each measure. So if you're tapping your feet along with the music, it'd go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, second measure, 3, 4, third measure, and fourth measure, and so forth. Now, I want you to look here. Look at these up here. These are called chord symbols, and they tell the piano player what to play. Well, they tell everybody what the piano player is playing. So they know that that first measure is B flat 7, and the second measure is E flat 7, and then B flat 7 for the third and fourth measure. Now, look down here. Here you have the same exact chords. Notice B flat up here, B flat 7 down here, same thing. Second measure E flat 7, second measure E flat 7 down here. B flat 7 for the third and fourth measure, same thing down here. But notice, there's music written up here. Music written by Sonny Rollins. There's music written there, but there's no music written down here. And the reason why there's no music written down there is because it hasn't been written yet. It hasn't been written yet. It gets written as the musicians are playing. So here's how it works. Every time they're going to go through this chord progression, all these chords, all 12 measures, whether up here, where they're playing their music that was written by Sonny Rollins, or they're improvising their own music through with the same chord progression. And every time they go through it, it's called a chorus. So they can solo for as many times as they want. If they solo once through, it's called one chorus. If they solo twice through, it's 2 choruses. 10 times, 10 choruses. 100 times, 100 choruses. They can solo for as long as they want. Now, the very first chorus, they play the melody, and we call that the head. Jazz musicians have their own lingo for everything. You know, I've been a professional musician since I've been 15 years old. In all these years, never have I gone to my job with my instrument to make some money by playing with the other fellows some toe-tapping music. But you go to your gig with your axe, make some bread, playing with the other cats, a killing set. So we call the melody the head. So they play the head, and they might repeat the head. And then chorus after chorus after chorus, they take solos, and then they play the head again at the end. So you got to think of jazz like a sandwich. You have one piece of bread at the top. That's the first time they play the head, the beginning. They have all the solos, and they have the head again at the end. That's the other piece of bread on the sandwich. And just like in a sandwich, all the good stuff, all the delicious good stuff is in the middle. And in jazz, all the solos are in the middle. So I want to make sure you understand what I mean by a note, a chord, and a jazz chord. A note, here's a single note. And if we have 3 separate notes, and you play them all at the same time, that's a chord. And if you have 4 separate notes, and you play them at the same time, that's a 7th chord. That's B flat 7. Here's E flat 7, B flat 7. That repeats. E flat 7. That repeats. B flat 7, G7, C minor, F7, B flat 7, G7, C minor, F7, and back to the top. And that's all the chords that are in the song. Now, when the piano player plays... Beautifully played. When the piano player plays the B flat 7th chord, the bass player will put a B flat note in the bass to give it more body. You'll hear the difference. Here's the B flat 7th chord again without the bass, and here it is with the bass. Hear the difference? Without the bass and with the bass. And here's E flat 7 and B flat 7. And that repeats, and so forth. Now, besides just playing the basic chords, the 4 notes that are in those chords, the piano player can add more notes to the chord to make it sound, more like jazz, to make it sound hipper. And we call those jazz chords. So here's just the regular B flat 7th chord again. And here's a jazz version of the same chord. Hear the difference? Here's the basic version, and here's a jazz version. And he knows lots of different versions. He'll play another one, and another one. And he knows dozens, and he can make up some as he goes along. So we're going to take you through this chorus by chorus, and I'm going to show you just what happens to make it sound more like jazz. When I bring the horn players on, that's when you're going to hear the head played, And that's where the tune would actually start on a recording. So let's just show you the preliminary first. Let's start with just the basic chords. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. And E flat 7, B flat 7. Notice 4 beats in each measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the bass player, rather than just playing the roots of the chords, can walk a bass line where she puts a note on every beat. She still lands on the root, lands on B flat, and lands on E flat, but all the other notes are improvised. And the drummer will take his right hand, and line it right up with the bass. So they're right together. And right together. Now he'll take his left foot on the hi-hat cymbal and put that on every other beat. Now everyone keep their place. Just like a jazz musician, you have to keep your place. And I want you to clap your hands one time when we get to the top. Right here, one time. Now, no matter how I try to distract you, at the very first measure, I want you to clap one time so you know where you are. Do you know where you are? 7, count with me. 8, count with me. 9, 10, count with me. 11, and 12, and good. Now, besides just these regular quarter notes, wait till we get to the top, everybody. Wait till we get to the top. Know where you are? 7, 8, count with me. 9, 10, 11, 12, now. Good, keep your place. Now let's have the bass player do some embellishments. A dick-a-da-dum, ding-dum. And the drummer can do some embellishments in his hand too. And he'll take his left hand on the snare drum and his right foot on the bass drum. 12. Good, and have a musical conversation between his left hand and his right foot. See, it's starting to sound more like jazz? Let's change these chords over here to jazz chords. Know where you are? 10, count with me, 11, 12, and good. Now let's, rather than the piano player just playing them when they change, he can comp anytime he wants. Comp. Good, let's bring our horn players out, and this is where the tune would actually start. Get ready, everybody. A 1. Notice they're playing the music just like Sonny Rollins wrote it, but with a nice swing feel. Now they might repeat the second chorus, and they're repeating the chorus, but notice they're in harmony now. But no harmony is written. They're doing the harmony by ear and using their knowledge of music theory. Music theory is like English grammar. Now it's time for the solos. Now it's time for the trombone solo. Let's see who solos next. Guitar. I still want you to clap at the top, everybody. 9, 10, 11, here we go. Now whose turn to take a solo? Who's soloing now? Can you tell? Piano. Who still hasn't soloed yet? Whose turn now? Who? Bass. Now, after the bass solo, we're going to do a thing we call trading fours, and that's where each instrument asks the drummer a 4-measure question. Trumpet asks the drummer a question. Everyone keeps their place. And trombone answers the drummer. Drummer answers the trombone. Now we've traded fours. We played the head, we've soloed, so what's left? And you playing the head, right? And it's the last chorus. And how do we know it's the last chorus? Because jazz is like a sandwich and they're playing the head. That's how you know the tune is almost over. And that's how jazz works. Now we're going to take you through the history of jazz. You know, jazz is a very new music, unlike classical music, which was around for years before jazz ever started. I mean, jazz is America's music. It was born in this country, and classical music, all the other art forms were like dance and drama and visual arts, painting and sculpture, were around long before there was even a United States of America. Jazz started here in this country. It's only a little over 100 years old. As a matter of fact, the very first jazz recording was made in 1917. So it's just a little over 100 years ago, started in New Orleans. But jazz is America's music, not just because it was born here, because more than any other music, jazz represents our most deeply held American values, like teamwork and unity with ethnic diversity, and the correlation of hard work and goal accomplishment. The correlation of hard work and goal accomplishment. In jazz, it's a one-to-one correlation. The more you practice, the better you get. Jazz also teaches us the vital importance of really listening to one another. That's what a jazz they can't function. The bass player doesn't know what to play unless she's listening to the drummer. The drummer doesn't know what to play unless he's listening to the bass player. And they have to listen to the pianist, and they all have to listen to the horn players, and the horn players have to listen to the rhythm section, or else everything falls apart. So they're intensely listening, and there's probably no better example of democracy than a jazz ensemble. Because what is democracy? Individual freedom, but with responsibility to the group. What's a jazz ensemble? Individual freedom. They can play whatever they want. No, there are no music stands up here. There's nobody conducting them, telling them how fast to play, how slow to play. They can play whatever they want as long as it makes the whole group sound better. So, in the early 1900s, the precursor to jazz was ragtime. And it was a piano style, and it was called ragtime because it had a march-like left-hand melody, bass line, boom chop, and then a ragged right hand with syncopation where all the notes and everything felt on upbeats, and that was the beginning of jazz, and it's called ragtime. And here's Scott Joplin was the most famous ragtime composer, and here's his Maple Leaf Rag. Testing 1, 2. Hello, everybody. That's ragtime. Next came bands that would imitate that. They were called ragtime bands, and then Dixieland bands. This is early jazz, and we'd like to bring on our vocalist, she's a graduate of the Herbie Hancock Institute of Jazz Performance, and now she sings all over the world. Please welcome Darynn Dean. This is the late teens and the early 20s, early 1910, 1920s. Here's When the Saints Go Marching In.
Oh, when the saints, oh, when the saints, oh, when those saints come marching in, how I want to be in that number. Oh, when those saints come marching in. Marching in, how I want to be in that number. When those saints come marching in. Oh, when those saints, yes, when those saints come marching in, how I want to be in that number. When the saints come marching in. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Let's move on to the 30s and the 40s. This was the big band era. And what happened was that rather than the small group Dixieland, which was like usually 5 to 7 players, the swing bands were around 18 players. Anywhere between 15 and maybe even 12 and 20 players would be considered a big band. And that's when you had the great Count Basie and Duke Ellington. And we'd like to do Duke Ellington's theme song right now, which was actually written by Billy Strayhorn, his partner in crime. Here is Take the A Train.
You must take the A train if you want to go to Harlem. Come on and just take the A train. You'll find the quickest way to get to Harlem. Hurry, come on girls, it's coming. Can't you hear those engines humming, those whistles strumming? Get on board that A train. You'll find the quickest way to get to Harlem.
the A Train and that swing. Now we move into the 40s and early 50s. Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie. You know, they didn't dig just plain dance music and music for entertainment. They thought jazz should be about artistry, and we're artists. We're just like famous conductors or composers. And so they developed a much more sophisticated style of jazz called bebop. And it was for listening, not for dancing. And I want to show you this if you look at the screen. This is one of the things they would do. They would take a general standard of the day, like I Got Rhythm by George Gershwin, and they would take the same chord progression and write a complicated, sophisticated melody over it. This one happens to be called Anthropology. If you notice, it's the same chord progression, but this, look at the few notes here for I Got Rhythm, and then this is a contrafact. So they would do that because they would already know the chords to so many of the standard tunes, like I Got Rhythm, and then they would write their own melody that would be more like the jazz that they improvised. So this would be more like the language of the style of the way they improvised rather than just all these long notes. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to play I Got Rhythm and Anthropology back to back.
I got rhythm, I got music, I got my man who could ask for anything more. I've got daisies in green pastures, I've got my man who could ask for anything more. Old man trouble, I don't mind him, you won't find him around my door. I've got starlight, I've got sweet dreams, I got my man who could ask for anything more. So rhythm, I've got music, I've got my man who could ask for anything more. I've got daisies in green pastures, I've got my man who could ask for anything more. Old man trouble, I don't mind him, you won't find him around my door. So
I Got Rhythm and Anthropology, bebop. You know, during the bebop era, that's where Dizzy Gillespie and others really started to grab Latin jazz into the bebop scene. And so Latin jazz became very popular. Thanks Tito Puente and Dizzy Gillespie. Here's one of those great Latin jazz hits from that era. This is called Manteca. Hancock. Well, there were some jazz musicians now in the late 40s. Miles Davis was one of them, and Dave Brubeck later in the 50s. They thought music was just getting too hot. Too hot. We needed to cool out. And cool jazz came onto the scene. Here's one of the most famous cool jazz tunes of all time by the great Dave Brubeck. They also started experimenting with odd time signatures. You know, so far everything else has been in 4/4, where you, or in 2/4, where you just, you know, 4 beats to a measure, 2 beats to a measure. This one, 5 beats to a measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's Take 5. Yeah, now the next movement in jazz was the hard bop movement. Now, I talk about these dates, but I want to let you know this, that all styles of jazz, from early jazz all the way to modern jazz, are still being performed and recorded today. So all these dates are just approximate times of when that style of jazz came to the forefront of jazz and experienced its greatest development. So there was cool jazz going on at the same time as bebop and at the same time as hard bop. Now what hard bop is, and we're going to play something for you that right now, cool jazz was borrowing all these elements from classical music. All these like classical chords and classical themes and these odd time signatures, and the music became less Afrocentric. And so many jazz musicians at the time said, we got to put the soul back into jazz. We got to put the blues back in. We got to put gospel back in, making it more Afrocentric. And hard bop was born. And there were two subsets of hard bop. One was called funky, not to be confused with funk of today, but soulful, bluesy, just 2 or 3 chords in the whole song. And then the other one was called mainstream, and that would be at all tempos with sophisticated chord progressions. So we're going to show you a little bit of both subsets right now. This is the funky style. This is the gospel, the blues, the groovin' style. This one's called Moanin' by Bobby Timmons. Yeah. The funky side of hard bop. Now, the other side was mainstream, and notice here's Moanin', which has just got a couple of chords here, as you can see. Giant steps, blistering fast, tempos like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, B, D7, G, B, So it became very difficult. Only the very most sophisticated and practiced players could play it. We'd like to show you giant steps. We always call this the rite of passage. If you can play giant steps, you've arrived. So here's giant steps, nice and bright. Jazz continued to evolve with free jazz and modal jazz, and then Miles Davis and Herbie Hancock and that crew came along, and they decided that we need to have more of a rock feel, and we want to identify with younger audiences, and fusion was born. Here is Chameleon by Herbie Hancock. Fusion blended electronic instruments with jazz. So electric keyboard now rather than acoustic piano, electric bass rather than acoustic bass. And this was my transition tune. When I was coming up, I was a rock and roller, and I was on the road with a rock band, and they were listening to Chameleon, and I said, "Hey man, what's that?" And they said, "That's jazz." I said, "I gotta get me into this." That was my transition tune, and here is Chameleon. So jazz borrows elements from all kinds of music all over the world: electronic music, classical music, Latin music, Asian music, everywhere. And in the 80s and 90s, jazz started to incorporate hip hop. And we'd like to do this tune right now called Cool Like Dat, and it samples Stretchin' by Art Blakey. Now, sampling is when they would take pieces of a song already recorded and manipulate them in a studio and make a brand new tune out of it. And this is Cool Like Dat by Diggable Planets, and sampling uses part of that original Art Blakey. Art Blakey was a very famous jazz drummer who had Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. So here's bebop and hip hop and all styles of jazz blended together.
like that. I'm cool like that. Yeah, I'm cool like that. You cool like that. We cool like that. Cause we cool like that.
I want to acknowledge my colleague Dan Seif, Dan Seif is the West Coast director of the Herbie Hancock Institute of Jazz, and he had got a radio show called Excursions, and some information is right up there if you want to take a picture of it. What he does is he blends jazz and hip hop together, plays jazz tunes and plays the hip hops that was sampled, and plays hip hop and the jazz vice versa, showing how both genres have influenced each other. And he also does a podcast where he interviews for the first time the hip-hop artists with the jazz artists that they sampled, and they meet for the first time. So it's really an incredible show. You can listen to it online, and I'll leave this on the screen so you can take a picture of it before you go. Before we wrap up, I want to finish the morning with modern jazz. Modern jazz. What's modern? Well, we're going to play an original recording, an original composition by this group right here, which is about as modern as it gets because it was just written. One of you guys want to introduce this one and tell them what you're going to play?
Thank you, everyone. We're going to play this tune I wrote 2 months ago called Tomorrows. Thank you so much.
the Herbie Hancock Institute of Jazz Performance Ensemble, and special guest Darynn Dean. Come on out, Darynn. Thank you, Dr. King. Thank you, Matt Jarris. Thank you, Tina Boyer. Thank you, Tom Clifford. Thank you, Shy Arts. Thank you, Chicago High School for the Arts. Thank you, Chicago Public Schools. Enjoy International Jazz Day one more time for this wonderful group.